1 minute ago, Britain stepped into its most serious constitutional emergency in 3 centuries. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has crossed a line no PM has before, openly challenging King Charles III. What follows could permanently alter the monarchy's role. If you want the inside scoop on this historic standoff, hit subscribe now. What I'm about to reveal will change the way you view British politics. The story began just 3 days ago, behind closed doors at Windsor Castle. King Charles did something almost unheard of for a modern sovereign. He met privately with Nigel Farage and leaders from Reform UK. This wasn't a brief greeting or a staged photo. It was a 2-hour strategy discussion in the King's private study. Palace sources say the monarch himself set up the meeting. What prompted it? A manifesto, Reform UK's new proposal to restore Britain's democratic structures, which apparently caught the King's attention. The paper warned of unchecked parliamentary power and the gradual weakening of Britain's old institutions, concerns that resonated with a monarch known to fret over long-term stability. Those warnings hit a raw nerve. During the meeting, Charles is said to have uttered a single line that lit the fuse. Maybe Westminster needs some new ideas. 12 words. That's all it took. Now those words threaten to unseat a prime minister, rattle the Labour Party, and throw Britain into its gravest crisis since Edward VIII's abdication in 1936. The meeting was meant to remain confidential. Royal custom requires strict silence when political matters come up. The crown must appear above the fray. Yet within 48 hours the story was everywhere. The Times broke it first, and then every major outlet followed. BBC, Sky, The Guardian, The Daily Mail. What should have been a private Windsor matter ended up on every front page. And here's the twist. The leak didn't come from Reform UK, who had reason to keep it quiet. Whispered palace accounts point to Downing Street, possibly angered Labour MPs who wanted to embarrass their leader by exposing the monarch's contact with political opponents. If that was the aim, it blew up in their faces. When Starmer got wind of the details, he reportedly lost control. Multiple sources say that at an emergency cabinet meeting yesterday, he stormed around the room, slamming documents down. Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner later described him as almost unhinged. Then came the eruption that could end his premiership. Starmer allegedly banged his fist on the cabinet table and snarled, "If Charles wants to step into politics, I'll teach him the rules of the game." The monarchy answers to Parliament, not the reverse. He's overstepped. The room fell silent. He didn't stop there. Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson told colleagues Starmer added, 3 centuries of constitutional practice. That's just elderly men in ceremonial robes playing at power. This is 2025, not 1725. If he wants a fight, he's found one. That was the moment everything changed. No prime minister in modern times, not even during the fiercest battles of the last century, has ever spoken about the monarch with such raw disdain. The crown is the sacred pillar of Britain's unwritten constitution. To challenge it so openly is political suicide. And within hours, Starmer's outburst slipped into the public domain. Ministers whispered to journalists, civil servants leaked texts to press gallery friends, and by evening the story was impossible to contain. But the real blow didn't come from the newspapers, it came from TikTok, Twitter, and Facebook. Within 6 hours, #DefendTheCrown was the #1 trending topic worldwide. Pro-monarchy voices erupted with rage, branding Starmer's words as treason. Old clips of his speeches resurfaced with captions like, "This is what happens when Republicans seize power." Memes exploded online. Starmer dressed as Oliver Cromwell, Starmer at the guillotine, Starmer tearing up the Union Jack. Social media devoured him. And it wasn't just right-wing critics piling on. Older, traditional Labour supporters recoiled in horror. One viral TikTok came from Margaret Thompson, a 68-year-old retired teacher from Liverpool. Looking straight into the camera, she said, "I stood with Labour through Thatcher. I stood with Labour through Blair. But attacking our king? That's not Labour. That's not Britain." Her clip hit 2.3 million views in just 24 hours. Then came the polling. A Snap YouGov survey released less than 18 hours later showed 73% of Britons believe Starmer had gone too far. Labour's approval ratings collapsed, plunging from 42% to 28% in a single day. In traditional Labour heartlands, the damage was even worse. 68% said they no longer trusted his judgment, and nearly half of Labour's previous voters admitted they were rethinking their support. This wasn't a wobble. This was a political earthquake, the kind that destroys governments and rewrites history. And through it all, King Charles has remained silent. Not a word. Constitutional scholars are already calling it his most brilliant move yet. Oxford professor Sarah Matthews explained it simply. The monarchy survives by staying above politics. If Charles speaks, he risks dragging the crown into the mud. By staying silent, he leaves the Prime Minister hanging. Every passing hour of silence fuels the outrage. The king appears calm, dignified, while Starmer looks increasingly reckless. Behind palace doors, insiders whisper that Charles is not only calculating but deeply hurt. One courtier described him as profoundly saddened that the institution he serves has been dragged into such ugliness. Yet outwardly, he shows nothing. No anger, no sorrow, only quiet resilience. And that stillness makes Starmer's rage look all the more unhinged. Meanwhile, panic inside Labour HQ has reached a breaking point. Their WhatsApp group, grimly nicknamed Damage Control, ballooned to over 40 MPs overnight. Messages are flying back and forth as the party scrambles for survival. Should we defend him? Should we cut him loose? Or even replace him? These were the questions tearing through Labour as panic spread. Veteran MP Diane Abbott reportedly told colleagues, "In 40 years in this party, I've never seen a leader implode like this. He hasn't just ruined himself, he's ruined us all." Names of successors began to swirl almost instantly. Angela Rayner, David Lammy, even whispers of Ed Miliband returning as a safe pair of hands, interim leader. The more they debated, the clearer it became. Starmer's leadership was hanging by a thread. The cracks were visible inside the cabinet, too. Transport Secretary Louise Hay was spotted leaving Downing Street in tears after what aides described as a furious shouting match with the PM. She allegedly told colleagues she couldn't defend this madness any longer. Chancellor Rachel Reeves, Starmer's closest ally, was suddenly nowhere to be found. Her absence from television studios was deafening, and pundits quickly suggested she was positioning herself as the frontrunner to succeed him. Meanwhile, Deputy PM Angela Rayner was quietly meeting MPs, calming nerves and offering reassurances. Insiders immediately recognized the maneuver. She was preparing her bid as the emergency replacement. Labour wasn't just in crisis. It was eating itself alive. And as Labour burned, Nigel Farage and Reform UK seized the moment with ruthless precision. Farage didn't gloat, he didn't sneer, and he didn't resort to cheap shots. Instead, he wrapped himself in the flag. Standing before Union Jacks outside Reform HQ, he delivered the speech of his career. "While others attack our king, we stand with him. While others tear down our traditions, we defend them. While others forget what it means to be British, we remember." The optics were flawless. Labour looked like it was waging war on heritage. Reform UK looked like the defender of national identity. The effect was immediate. Party membership exploded, surging 400% in 3 days. Donations poured in, not from wealthy elites but from ordinary voters, disillusioned ex-Labour supporters desperate to rally behind the party that sided with the crown. For Farage, it wasn't just a good week. It was the week that transformed his movement from fringe insurgency into a legitimate national contender. Meanwhile, the Conservatives, battered and divided for years after Brexit, suddenly found themselves in a position of unexpected strength. Opposition leader Kemi Badenoch played her hand with discipline. She didn't overplay it. She didn't sound triumphant. But her words cut through. The Prime Minister has shown utter disrespect for our constitutional monarchy and for the millions of Britons who hold it dear. This isn't politics, as usual. This is an attack on the foundations of our democracy. Conservative strategists could hardly believe their luck. One senior Tory told The Telegraph, "We couldn't have scripted this better. Labour has reminded Britain why they can't be trusted with our institutions." The path ahead was obvious. Cast themselves as the steady, patriotic alternative while Labour imploded and reform surged. And beyond Britain, the world was watching and laughing. In Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was asked about the chaos, and though his words were measured, the message was unmistakable. We respect the important role constitutional monarchy plays in parliamentary democracy. Translation: Britain's leader has lost the plot. In Australia, Opposition Chief Peter Dutton was far less restrained. He called Starmer's remarks disgraceful and accused him of damaging Australia's respect for British leadership. Even in America, where British politics rarely tops the news, networks ran the story for days. Anchors replayed Starmer's rant about old men in fancy clothes with disbelief, turning the UK, once the emblem of stability, into an international punchline within 24 hours. Then came the numbers. A YouGov Snap poll delivered the most devastating verdict in Labour's modern history. 73% of voters said Starmer's words about the King were unacceptable. Labour's support collapsed overnight, tumbling from 42% to 28%. In heartlands like Liverpool, Newcastle, and Manchester, the drop was even sharper, double digits wiped out in hours. And the most lethal statistic of all, 45% of Labour's own voters said they were reconsidering their support. These weren't ordinary swings. These were political death blows, the kind of numbers that topple governments and redraw the map. By week's end, Labour was in free fall at 26%. Reform UK surged to 24%. The Conservatives held steady at 32%. For the first time ever, Nigel Farage was within reach of overtaking Labour as the official opposition. Inside Labour's parliamentary ranks, despair hardened into revolt. Backbenchers plotted late-night calls, whispering about no-confidence letters. Senior figures admitted privately what no one dared say aloud. Starmer was finished. Leaks poured into the press. Diane Abbott was quoted telling colleagues, "He hasn't just destroyed himself, he's destroyed every Labour candidate across the country. He's wrecked our credibility." The WhatsApp group meant for damage control morphed into a coup HQ, with names of replacements flying back and forth: Angela Rayner, Rachel Reeves. Even Yvette Cooper floated as a unity pick. The debate had shifted. It was no longer if Starmer would fall, but when. The collapse soon broke into the open. Transport Secretary Louise Hay resigned, citing irreconcilable differences with Starmer's stance on the monarchy. Her resignation letter leaked instantly, splashed across The Guardian, before the ink dried. Within hours, 2 junior ministers followed her out. Rumors spread that more were ready to jump. Chancellor Rachel Reeves stayed silent, refusing to defend Starmer on air, her absence louder than words, each silence another knife. Meanwhile, Angela Rayner carried on her quiet rounds, meeting MPs in private, soothing nerves, shoring up support. To many, she no longer looked like the deputy, she looked like the heir apparent. So, where does Britain go from here? Labour lies in ruins, fighting for its life. The Conservatives, wounded but steady, eye the prize. Reform UK has surged from fringe movement to central force. And the monarchy, once seen as vulnerable, now towers stronger than ever. This was more than a scandal, more than a political meltdown. This was a pivot point, a moment when history stopped and began again. Britain faces an uncertain road, but one truth cannot be denied. History is being rewritten before our eyes.